Hello, listeners. Welcome to the very first episode of In Their Corner, advocating for every student. My name is Michael Cipolla. I'm superintendent of schools at Randolph Academy Union Free School District in Western New York. And today joining me is Sarah Taylor. Sarah is the president in New Directions Youth and Family Service of New Directions Youth and Family Services. And the purpose of our podcast is truly In Their Corner, advocating for every student. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the work that our organizations take on, some of our shared goals and shared work, and importantly, what is our mission and vision. So to start, a little bit about, for our listeners, about Randolph Academy Union Free School District. We are a public school in New York State who have the honor of serving the families and students from various counties across our region and the expanded parts of New York State. We have roughly 160 students enrolled with us between two campuses in Hamburg, New York and Randolph, New York. And our Randolph campus has the privilege of working with residential students as well as day students. We provide education and services for students K through 12, primarily in the 2 through 12 component and age group, but we are looking at expanding our efforts. So again, it's about advocating for our students, and we thought that we would begin to expand our network of listeners and advocate for the students and services that we provide here, hence why Sarah is joining us today. Sarah, if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about New Directions Youth and Family Services and what services you provide and what your mission and vision are for the children of New York State?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm honored to be a guest here. I think the topic of advocating for every student is really important and is a natural fit for the type of work we do at New Directions and in our collaboration with you at Randolph Academy. So a little bit about New Directions. We are a large organization that serves 8 counties of Western New York. We have a spectrum of care services. So we serve youth and families who have kids in residential placement, kind of like the top of the spectrum. And then the full continuum of care with a lot of preventive services. So really, as our organization first got started, it was primarily residential and foster care, and then just recognizing that there's a lot of value in putting in preventive mental health. So we deliver a lot of services in home, or youth and families come to us. We offer support groups, peer services, community-based foster care. We have supervised independent living and some community-based group homes. And I'm sure I forgot some things in there, so apologize for that. But ultimately, our mission is to serve youth and families. We're primarily a child-serving organization to help youth and families kind of eventually no longer need any services like ours. That's our long-term goal.
Hearing you talk, you talked a little bit about the services that you provide for families and students and the children of New York State. That obviously aligns with our mission in that we are working with students who may or may not be coming with a trauma background or experiences in trauma, and we may be working with students that have varying educational needs. And when we in education, we talk about wraparound services, so the whole program, not only the educational component, but what complementary services are in place to support students and families. You're a partner in that with us because you're providing for roughly 40 of our students, 40 of the 160 students that we serve and families, that wraparound component. Can you talk a little bit more about the services that you are providing for families and the children outside the walls of a traditional school?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we have those 40 identified kids that we share in common because they're in our residential care. So all of the kids that are in care at Randolph naturally attend Randolph Academy. That's a great part of our history and our collaboration. But also there are a lot of kids that our services, when you talk about trauma-informed care, it's taking an individualized approach. And so kind of looking at what does that family need? Do they need support with case management? Do they need some preventive kind of in-home either mental health counseling, skill building, things like that. So recognizing where the family's at, what their needs are, and all of those wraparound services. There's different things available depending on which county the family lives in, because
Right.
a lot of our services, the funding comes from the local counties, or we bill health insurance and Medicaid. So it kind of depends on what's available in their area, but we try to make it work regardless. We have a lot of staff that are really committed to kind of taking that approach, getting in there, working with the family, what works for them in their home, providing support, those kind of at-home supports. When you look at it from the school perspective about what can help them to be successful at school. So a lot of that is communication, identifying what the youth's needs are, things like that.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about, and I appreciate this, that the services that go into the educational component, and not every school, it's not a one size fits all for children, right? And the more and more we learn about educational opportunities for children and the learning styles of each child and addressing individual needs, I think the stronger we become in our services, not only the services your organization provides, but the education services we provide. And one of the things that we are seeing across New York State is a reform and graduation requirements. And that's really important to schools such as ours. Being a special ed school district, we identify strengths and students, and students are identifying those strengths, and they need to be able to showcase their proficiency and mastery in many skilled areas. And so we applaud New York State for that work in the New York State Education Department that they're taking on. And also with that comes the funding advocacy, right? How do schools and not only the traditional public schools, but how do schools and organizations such as ours ensure that with the reform that's happening for children and services and education, how do we appropriately address the financial needs that come with that? And I think it's about advocacy and education for our local and statewide dignitaries. It's really inviting folks to see the important work that we do, and that on behalf of the children and families of New York State. And so that's really important work for us, and we hope that this podcast will continue with those advocacy efforts. We're thankful to New York State Education and New York State for their work in supporting the Special Act work, and all the schools that are Special Act school districts in New York State. How important is it for your organization for advocacy from a funding standpoint, but also from a service standpoint? So what type of advocacy work is necessary to sustain the important work that you're doing in your organization?
As you're speaking, I'm thinking kind of about long-term outcomes and success. And so when we think about kids that have been in foster care, there's a lot of research out there to say that their outcomes are sadly not great. There's intergenerational trauma. The system that we work in, I think you see a lot of parents and grandparents, caregivers who it's kind of a cycle. And so while we're in the business of prevention and things, it is very expensive to meet all of the needs of youth and families. Investing in kids and families at this level prevents that future negative, exceptionally high cost. It's just from a funding perspective, and I think generally overall for the well-being of kids who, really deserve the best shot. And it's not fair for them to have experienced poverty and just hardships that set them at a disadvantage. And so we're countering against that in the full spectrum of services, from education to in-home to foster care, to kids that are in residential care. And I think it's great that in today's modern society, there's more of an awareness of that than there was many years ago, but there's still a long way to go.
Right. No, exactly. Well said, Sarah. And I think students and children need to feel what success feels like. And we have to provide those opportunities. And the best way to find those opportunities is to tap into and provide opportunities where students can showcase their strengths, right? And feel that, because success will definitely deepen further success. And it's growth. We all go through, growth opportunities in our own lives, and we have to ensure that the opportunities that our students are provided are indeed matching their skill sets, and they're able to showcase that, because success breeds success. And we do not pretend to walk in the shoes of our children and what it's like and what life, the path of life has brought them. But what we will do is ensure that they have the structure and the supports around them. And I think that's really the important part.
Absolutely. I think that's a great thing that Randolph Academy has to offer. Really having kids that, like you said, have that opportunity to experience success, which most likely was not the case prior to coming here. And that's most likely the reason why they did come here. And that in and of itself is a trauma for a child. When you think about, being removed from a home or having to change schools under the best of circumstances. So coming here, coming to the residential program, coming to the day school, coming to Randolph Academy, there's a lot of opportunities, and just, I think, maybe mindset on the part of the teachers and the staff here that really understands and respects the place where they're coming from.
Yeah, there's definitely a patience and understanding that the students that we serve and the families that we serve are looking for care and consistency in their educational life and in their support services. And it's important for our staff to understand that and practice that in our day-to-day interactions. Having patience, empathy, sympathy in some cases is so important in the education we provide. And I know that in the crossover services with New Directions, that's an important component for your staff, is making sure that there's consistency, because the kids are asking for care and consistency every day they walk through our doors, right? Or come home to their residential, the residential side for New Directions. And it's important that they feel that consistency, and we ultimately look to strengthen the services day in and day out that we provide. I think that we never should be satisfied with the status quo.
Absolutely.
We're dealing with lives, we're dealing with lives of children that are that need that advocacy, right, and that sustainability in their life. And it's important work that we do. When we look at some of the, we provide obviously some of the services and the educational component from our staffing levels, and we really very much pride ourselves on continuous learning, lifelong learning, continuous professional learning in our school. And that's through professional development work, and whether it's small group within the walls of our school, or expanded work through further education opportunities with the University of Buffalo, for example. So understanding the trauma work and how trauma informs and impacts development in a child, and how it impacts the learning in a child, the educational needs, is really important work for us. What do you see, Sarah, as some of the necessary training for your staff and your organization to continually grow and learn about the changing world of trauma-informed work?
Well, I feel like we keep talking a lot about trauma-informed
Sure.
training, but that is kind of the basis of, especially we, employ staff with a variety of backgrounds and educational levels, where they come to us sometimes as a frontline worker who does not have a lot of background or education in the field, and so we provide a lot of hands-on training. And that's really where we start, is with trauma-informed care. We also pay a lot of attention at New Directions to an intentional agency culture, what we call as our normative culture. And I know we've shared that training, cross-training between our agencies over the years. And so really what that does is it helps for us as employees and with the kids that we're serving and care to make it so that we're recognizing, let's build these habits and behaviors into our culture so that you don't have to think about it. You just behave that way, kind of the unspoken rules and norms. And so that's something that right off the bat we train all of our staff in. I think kind of what you were speaking to a bit about a culture of continuous quality improvement. So not just being satisfied with the status quo, but what more can we do? How can we really help with permanency and kids achieving lifelong goals? The resources, I think having the time for training can often be a barrier. But I think it's so important, and it's also very refreshing as somebody who has that opportunity to be able to participate in professional development. Kind of takes you out of your day-to-day for a little bit and brings you back a little bit more invigorated.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the normative culture, because that is something that, as you mentioned, both organizations share in common. And one component for us is the restorative practices. And being a non-traditional school, but we are a public school in New York State, we understand that every child that comes to us brings an individuality, and what works for example, negative consequences often don't work in education, and actually more times than not, it does not work.
Right.
So it's about working with children at an age and developmentally appropriate way for them to walk away from a choice that they made or behavior that they displayed, and be able to learn from both the positive aspect of it and maybe some of the consequences of their choices. And it's really much a restorative environment here. And when I look at what the services that you and your staff provide at New Directions, it's very much restorative. It's about engaging a child on their behavior, both positive and negative behaviors. And one of the things that I really applaud about the staff here at Randolph Academy is while we document incidents that may be negative choices, let's say, we also document all the positive choices.
Oh, that's great.
In the month of September, we had over 900 positive referrals written, positive referrals about, and it's the success breeds success. So if a child is recognized for the positive choices that they are making, that is so important.
Absolutely.
So important.
Yeah.
Is there a restorative, what are some of the restorative components to your programming?
I think it looks a lot different in a school setting compared to an additional, non-school setting. We have attended, a lot of our leadership has attended their sort of justice training practices, and some of our supervisory staff. And I think the philosophy of what you just described, kind of like repairing and rebuilding those relationships, opposed to, I think in like the legal world, like having a consequence, doing your time or serving your time, that kind of thing. I think that is not, that is not the way that we operate. We focus on strengths as well. I have to think a little bit more about specifically restorative practices in our actual programs. I think from a staff perspective, we've used it. That's where more of my experience has come in, with just helping.
That's a normative piece.
Yeah. And just kind of going around and giving every person an opportunity to kind of share their perspective, and teaching that empathy and hearing how something has affected somebody differently, and opening your mind to that is a really great feature of restorative practices.
And it's so much about communication and relationship building, not only at the adult level, but with our students and children that we serve. And what we try to cultivate in our environment here is that everyone communicates differently. Everyone responds to communication differently. And understanding the person that's sitting in front of you or around you and how they're taking in information is really important. Because sometimes things are communicated and it's misunderstood, right? And I think that's that normative piece. Creating an environment where I can say, Sarah, you mentioned, this and this information to me, but here's what I'm hearing, and how I'm processing that information. Having an environment where I feel comfortable asking you and having that conversation is really important work for us here.
Yeah, I think we could solve like half the world's problems if we,
Yes.
what you're speaking to is so true, and I see that all the time, where what you think you've said is not what someone else heard, and you walk
Sure.
away with two different things. And most of the time, do not take that opportunity to come back and even say, "This is my takeaway." You know, sometimes we put things in writing, and that clarifies it a little bit. And then when you kind of think about that at a, coworker or
Mhm.
staff level, it's one thing that I observe every day. It's like speaking different languages. And then you think about adding that element into a child who maybe has a learning disability or
Mhm.
is under stress or just had a really bad morning. I mean, I think we forget about that kind of stuff sometimes just as we go about our everyday. And certainly I think in kind of everyday schools where there's a lot more going on, it's not that easy to think about that at all. But at least here in our setting, we are training people and helping them to remember that type of interaction is important to really recognize maybe this youth, maybe this child is not really, there's something else going on.
I appreciate that you brought up the word behavior,
Mhm.
because for us, and one of the things that we, in our opening day, talked a little bit about the staff, was behavior is communication. And whether I or a child or a kiddo is presenting a positive behavior, or maybe it's what we perceive as a negative behavior, it is communication. Behavior is communication. So it's important for us, and you had mentioned that we don't know at any given moment what it might be on the mind of a kiddo or a student or a child, and understanding that when they present a behavior, whatever it might be, they are communicating something to us, and we have to be trained in empathy, utilizing skills of empathy, and again, sometimes sympathy, to continue that trust building. So how we respond at that given moment to a kiddo is really important, because that may make a lasting impression on how the day continues on to be for that child in the school year. And so we don't know how impressionable that particular moment is. So it's really important for us to understand that behavior is communication, and that's really important for us. And I'm sure it's very important in your work.
Absolutely. And, I think what you talked about there is that moment where a staff person is able to recognize that that's what's going on, and their response to that helps to build that trust. And that is really how all of the work that we do gets done.
Mhm.
It's about that therapeutic relationship and that trust between the kids view the adults in their life as people that they can trust, that will help them solve their problems, that will see when they're upset. And those are some of the kind of intangibles. Like that's
Sure.
what you aim for when you're having that training on day
Yeah.
one. And then, when you see it on a day-to-day basis, it's a really cool thing to be able to recognize that. I forgot what your question was because that made me think of that
No,
piece of it.
No, you definitely captured that very well. And I think when we think about behavior being a way of communication, and I think if we can, as adults and educators and leaders, think about how that can inform the practices that we take on, whether it's in the classroom or from a service standpoint, whether it be individual, group counseling, or wraparound services, I think that could be a really powerful thing. Because if we take a step back and really reflect upon the situation or interaction with a student or child, I think that helps establish that trust that the family and the child are looking for. The rapport building with children is an essential component to education and the success of the services, the wraparound services.
Yep.
I think that's important work for both of our groups.
Yeah. I think that speaks back to kind of the culture of the organization, be it our agency or within a school, and that the more you can do to make it so this is just the norm, this is how we act, this is how we behave, it makes it so much easier for everyone else. I keep losing track of what I'm going to say because I think I have like 50 things going on at the same time.
It's busy work that we do.
It is.
It's essential work.
It is. I think what I was thinking about is when you look at a child or anyone, any person who is behaving a certain way, if you're able to put yourself in their shoes, sometimes you might realize like you might have behaved the same way or you might be feeling the same way. And so that's where it's our responsibility to kind of look at what are the structures and supports we can put in place to be as preventive as possible so that we're not having daily crisis and daily struggles, and that we can set that safe, stable, secure foundation for kids and for families.
Yeah, and if it hasn't come through yet in our podcast and our conversation, we very much appreciate the partnership we have with New Directions Youth and Family Services. It is and you are the foundation for our children. And when they walk through the hallways each morning and they come through our doors each morning, we know the work that has gone into supporting the child and making sure that they're coming ready for school, ready for their services, and the education that we provide. That's so important. And we value the work and support that you all and your staff put forth each day in and day out, night in and night out for the kiddos of New York State. And we're here as a partner. We really are. And we share many very similar, we share a similar vision and mission. There's no doubt about that. The services that we provide, there's definitely some continuity there. And it truly takes that wraparound educational and supportive piece for the kids and families of New York State. And we continue to try to be better, right? We continue to try to be better. And I think the communication between our organizations is very strong and it continues to get stronger. And we're just very thankful for your work.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I hope that all of the team members at New Directions Randolph campus are all listening and hear that positive feedback, and we feel the same way. I think that the collaboration between our agencies and ongoing is really exciting, and really having that shared mission of serving kids and families with the best possible resources is wonderful.
It's so true. And I'm relatively new to Randolph Academy. I came last February from the traditional public school environment. And what drew me to the work at Randolph Academy is the mission, right, and the vision. It's extremely important work. And I have some familiarity with Randolph Academy, but until you walk through the doors and you witness the positivity in the work that's happening to cultivate a positive environment full of good vibes, it's really important work. And the patience, trust, care, and consistency that our staff provide here at Randolph Academy is truly impressive. And I can't thank our staff enough for the work and the patience and empathy that they bring to work day in and day out, because there's a true love and care for the kiddos here. And it's unmatched. And I know that the work that you and your staff are doing is truly a partnership, and we're thankful for that.
Yeah, I agree. I am also new within the past year. You and I kind of started around a similar time. I'm not new to New Directions as an agency. I've been with the company for a little over 20 years, but primarily my background has been in the community-based services. So those supports and services in home, outside of the school and outside of residential. And then this past year, I've always had a working relationship with Randolph and Randolph Academy, but not a direct role.
Sure.
And so I think that gives both of us kind of like that outside perspective coming in and recognizing what great work is being done. In my first tour around the halls at Randolph Academy, it's just, I would agree with you, a really wonderful, welcoming environment, just from the decorations on the hallway to each classroom that we walk in and kind of the welcome reception. You can't fake that kind of stuff. It's very genuine. Same thing with the staff at Randolph campus. It's there's a lot of thought that's gone into making sure we have quality. What it looks like around the setting is really like that we care. There's a lot of tenured staff at both organizations that are really committed to this work and really want to make sure that we're providing the best services for kids.
Yeah, well said. That passion that folks have at Randolph Academy in New Directions, it spreads throughout each of the organizations. And when I look at that passion, and we're a school, right? So our primary role is to educate, ensure that kiddos leave us with the necessary skills to be successful, right? And in life and contributing members to their communities and so forth. And that's our ultimate goal. And that passion is definitely present in the classrooms here at Randolph Academy. We have, skill-based learning in culinary arts, cosmetology, barbering. We're incorporating higher levels of science and technology to our classrooms. So that the passion that folks bring is contagious, right? And it is the good vibes. I think that students should walk through the hallways, walk through the classroom doors and feel. And that's our ultimate goal, is to ensure that students feel welcome, they feel safe here at Randolph Academy, and they feel that their education is worthwhile. And that's important to us. And we'll never stop striving for perfection. And that's important for all of us here at Randolph Academy. So there's definite commonality between our mission and our work. And there's many joint efforts and collegial efforts between our organizations. And we would like to continue that partnership. I think it's essential in the shared professional development that we take on, and the communication just day in and day out between our staff, knowing that a student is coming to school each day with recognition of the positive attributes is important work for us. And then conversely, if there's a challenge that student might be facing walking through the doors in the morning of Randolph Academy, that communication is really essential for us too. And that partnership is key, and we're thankful for it again.
Yeah, I think the future is bright with what we have to look forward to. There's a lot, I think, having kind of that shared foundation of what the vision looks like for the future is a great starting point for what comes next. It's bright because there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of people that will benefit from the services that we have to offer. It's a little murky at the same time because we don't know what's happening with funding at the state level.
Sure.
And that's always a challenge, that uncertainty, but it's great to have partners to work through it together.
Definitely. And again, I think that our advocacy efforts are truly in the best interest of the students and families that we both serve. There is a need. There are many positive stories to be shared. We could probably record countless episodes of our podcast sharing success that our children and students move on to in the world. So we're doing important work. Our staff are taking on important work, and we've accepted a high level of responsibility and ownership for the work that we take on, and we have to take it very seriously. And I believe both organizations do a very nice job with that and continue to be the best possible service provider and educational organization that we can be. So I definitely see opportunities for future collaboration and strengthening of our partnership. Some key takeaways that I see from our conversation today, Sarah: work around empathy, behavior is communication, the important work of advocacy for the families and students that we serve in New York State is essential. The need is there. It's important that folks and families feel supported and that children feel supported, and it's all about relationships and communication. I think those are some of the key takeaways I gather from the important message that you shared, Sarah, and we'll continue to share good vibes in the work that we do. And I thank our listeners for joining us today. I look forward to future episodes of In Their Corner, advocating for every student. I anticipate future episodes that dig a little bit deeper into some of the trauma-informed care and trauma-informed work that we take on. so we could spread our message, spread our word, and also be continuous learners in our own work. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us, and till the next episode, In Their Corner and Advocating for Every Student, I'm Mike Cipolla, Superintendent of Schools at Randolph Academy Union Free School District, and thank you all for listening, and it's an honor to continue to work with the students of New York State.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you.